uh, July 14th, 2014. Tell me a little bit more about your chess background. How long you've been playing? What kind of things you've done with chess, aside from on chess.com? Mm-hmm. 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 Well, well, that's good. That's good. Okay. I just like I said that. Uh huh. Mm-hmm. 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 Okay. Well, let me ask you this: since you're playing online chess, I think it's a great way to improve your game. It really worked for me. I owe it to playing chess by mail or correspondence chess to becoming a chess master. How much time do you spend on every move? You know, you get a move from your opponent. What do you do? Oh, good. Well, that's fine. That's totally fine. Uh, see, I was gone from playing in chess clubs for almost 17 years because of where I lived and my lifestyle. I was working two jobs, living at the beach for 7 years. Then I moved out to the middle of nowhere in the desert. And I was 90 miles from any reasonably sized town, so there was just no opportunity to play chess except on the internet. And in that time, the internet grew, and and chess by mail pretty much went out of popularity, and they introduced online chess where the post office is gone, and the move is transmission is instant. And what didn't happen was nobody bothered to tell players this is how you play correspondence chess. So it's my job to try to educate people to say this is a time you can learn the opening. This is time you can develop your analytical skills. Make sure that you win a game that you should win. You can make sure you win it, and plus you get to learn the endings. And I think I'm making an influence. I've got over 400 videos up in public on YouTube. Now I did send you an invitation to the Rat Pack, correct? Okay, great. Okay, in the forum I have a video series, my first 40, 41, 42 tournament games. I made recordings of those. I need to get back and do more of them. I will soon. But in those 40 games, they're pretty memorable for me. I have this great memory. I can still remember a lot of the things I was thinking, why I made certain moves. It's almost scary that I can remember something 42 years ago, but son of a gun, I did. And this kind of shows the development of me as a player, what I knew. 4 or 5 years of reading books, playing in clubs with kids my age, 12 to 17, and so forth. Now, when you take with the lessons, what I do with all my students, I like to go. I'm going to show you something after this game, but I'm going to make a. Well, let's see. I think I can reset it. I think I can do what I want to do. Watch. I do this with all my students. It's something I find that comes in handy. Okay, if let's see, let's put this here. No matter whose move it is, do you know the correct result of this position. It's okay if you don't. Yes, white wins no matter whose move it is. Let's take a look. Okay, doesn't matter which way white steps. Now white just brings the pawn up, and black must abandon the square, and it becomes a queen. Now if it's black's move, it gets a little tricky. Okay, the wrong thing to do is to step in front of the king, because what happens, you reach a very similar position to last time, except you're going in with check. And now white must abandon the pawn or give a stalemate, and the game becomes a draw. So the correct way to win this is after the king moves, you just bring your king forward, and then the pawn will promote. Okay, I'm going to change the position ever so slightly. And there's a reason I'm doing all this. Black to play. What is the result? Actually, black to play draws if he plays correctly. The way to let's look at the possibilities. The correct way to draw is to go straight back. Now it doesn't matter which side white goes in, you have to go in with check, and there's the position we just saw. Okay, and if white goes the other way, the same thing happens. So, but if black goes diagonally back, he loses, and we've seen this position before. See? So, okay. So what I've shown you between the two is a principle. Maybe you've seen it talked about. It's called the principle of two weaknesses. What the principle of two weaknesses essentially says is that in order to win a game, you must have two weaknesses in your opponent's position. If you don't have two weaknesses in your opponent's position, you can't win. That's what it says. And in the first position, black had two weaknesses. Number one, white was a pawn ahead, and number two, white had king position. In the second game, white was a pawn ahead, but black had the king position, so black only had one weakness. So what it basically says is, if you're winning a pawn in the game, unless you have another weakness in your opponent's position, you're not winning yet. But usually, if you win a pawn, chances are there's a second weakness in your opponent's position. So the other thing I like to work with my students is an analogy I developed. If you're driving a car up a hill and you take your foot off the accelerator pedal, you slow down. We know that. But what happens when you put your foot back down on the pedal, you'll continue to go up, but you won't be going as fast as you were. You understand what I'm saying? So I kind of relate this into chess. You say you have a good game, you're going uphill, and all of a sudden you don't make the best move. It's kind of like you're taking your foot off the pedal, and you have to work a little harder to get to the top of the hill. Now you're probably going to make it, but it gets harder. And you can only afford so many of these little breaks, because especially if you're playing a strong opponent. I can remember countless times when I was developing as a chess player, I had strong players beaten. They'd made a blunder. I capitalized on it. I had a material and a positional advantage, and I didn't finish them off. And every time I made a little slip, they started improving their position and made a comeback. So sometimes when I talk to you about a move, I'll say this move doesn't quite help you because of you're taking your foot off the pedal. Now you call this the Kali-Zucker-Tort. Actually, I don't think it's a Kali unless this is played, but I see what you're trying to do, and your position is fine. Normally, the pawn goes to c3. I'm sure it's okay to put on b3. But one thing about these queen pawn openings I want to draw your attention to, just to get you to think ahead of time. Both sides have two bishops. Can you identify which is the good bishop for white and which is the good bishop for black?
The white square bishop is definitely good for white,
Mm-hmm.
and black has which is good for black. Actually, both are good for black.
Well, specifically in this case, the way to often determine which is a good bishop, which is a bad bishop, is in queen pawn openings is look at this pawn structure. This makes a giveaway and tells you that for the most part, for white, this is the good bishop. There it is, and this is black's good bishop because they can maneuver around those pawns. Conversely, the bad bishops are these bishops because of those pawns. So when you have an opportunity to trade bishops, you try to keep your good bishop if you can, and try to trade your bad bishop if you can. Little things to think about. Uh, but b3 is fine. You made a note here that uh, about castling, and if he plays c4, just drop your bishop back. Yeah, that's fine. But here he's making what I consider a fundamental mistake. Uh, do you know what let's see what you think. What do you think was wrong with his last move? And because I'm going to teach you to think like I do. What was wrong with that move?
I think he releases the tension in the center right away, and then he helps me opening the d5 for my rook.
Okay, those are both good answers. Those are both good answers. The answer that I would give, it goes back to Aaron Nimzovich. If you can read the book My System, Nimzovich talks about one thing on exchanging. Don't make exchanges that improve or develop the position, the placement of your opponent's pieces. And there's countless examples of this on the videos I make. If you watch enough of them, you'll see it. What he's just done is he's opened up a line for your bishop. Okay? That's what fundamentally is wrong. There's more to it than that. You got the nail on the head. But the first thing I want you to see is that he has opened up the scope of your bishop. Okay? Now, he gives a check. Now, I think what would have been a very useful move for you here you played knight here, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think what would have been a very useful move would be for you to play c3.
This is probably the other option I considered. But then I decided that I would rather develop a piece, and then if you capture with the bishop, I get the knight out or my bishop out.
Okay, but one thing this does is it preserves the tempo. And also, remember when I said a couple of moves ago, I said identify your good bishop and your bad bishop? Suddenly you don't have a bad bishop anymore because your bishop got active. So now the rules change. You want to keep both bishops on the board because you can use this bishop. So that's why c3 is a good move. It gains an immediate tempo. He has probably the best square for him to go to is e7. Now, when I analyze a position, there's no guarantee if you were to play the moves that I suggest that your opponent's going to do what I do. When I analyze a position, I'm not always 100% accurate. Sometimes I make one move blunders. You're going to see me hang pieces left and right because that's just one of my weaknesses. But when I analyze a position, all I do is develop pieces, okay, or try to find active moves that create things. So let's just take it out a few moves and see what happens. Okay, next step. Here's a diagonal. Let's take it. See, it's a diagonal for the bishop. We're just going to take it. Now black needs to develop, and you need to develop. And now black's got this problem bishop here. It's in his way. Where does he put it? If he ever tries to break with e5, he gets an isolated pawn. So if it goes to d7, it can get in his way and it's not very aggressive. Now you just increase the pressure, or keep developing your pieces, and everything should be fine for you. You're ready to play a move, almost ready to play a move like knight e5, and then you can back it up with another knight, or take back with the bishop if you have the chance. And well, you got to watch c3. You got to make sure c3 doesn't hang. That's why you might protect it first. But all you're doing is developing pieces, and you have a perfectly fine position. And your bishops are controlling a lot of territory. See, they're taking squares away from your opponent, and they have room to maneuver. This black bishop on d7 is kind of acting like a pawn. It's not going to get active for maybe another 20 moves. And this bishop here doesn't really have a lot of scope. So that would be my suggested improvement. Now let's back up to where we diverged. Give me a second and I'll find it. Yeah, I know. You played knight bd2. Here it is. Okay. When you analyze a line on chess.com in the window off to the right, it embeds the new variation within it, and when you get too many variations, it gets very hard to find where you were. I wish they would improve that facet. And now we both develop. Oh wait, I'm missing a move. Okay, here there was no need to play this move. Actually, you have a better move. If you might have a better move here. Well, there's two better moves. One is just put the bishop here. The idea behind that is you're stopping him from castling. But I think an even better move is just to castle yourself. Okay? Now, you're going to have a little bit of difficulty getting this bishop into play, but it's going to get into play. And I'll show you how. Okay. See, this knight on d2 doesn't have a square to go to, but we're going to fix that. So let's castle for black. Now, you put the knight into a pin, but that's okay. Let's develop a piece for black. We'll do that again. Now let's go ahead and play this move. And if he takes, you take back with the rook and your knight's unpinned. If he develops a piece, you can go ahead and stick the rook here for now, and then you're free to back up your other knight with a knight. It costs you a tempo, but the point here is you're keeping your dark squared bishop, which I said was a good piece. So you didn't necessarily need to trade your bishop. Now, I don't like to trade pieces, minor pieces in the opening, especially before development is complete. That doesn't mean that won't happen in one of my games, or it shouldn't happen in one of mine or your games. Usually, if pieces start coming off the board quickly, if 3 minor pieces are traded in the first 12 moves, you're going to end up with a position probably where both sides have maybe one piece developed, because everything else has been developed and traded off. And that reduces your winning chances. The more pieces that come off the board, the harder it is to win. Chess in itself, the initial position, of course, there's plenty of winning chances there. But if you were to take off all the pieces except for the kings, and you're going to have a hard time winning even a king and pawn ending. If you took off left one knight each, you're going to have a hard time winning that, or one rook each. So the logic is that you don't want to trade off too many. You don't want to trade off too many pieces. And my feeling is, here's my logic, and this is the confidence I want you to learn to have. What you want to feel is that you can do more with your pieces than your opponent can do with his. And then you try to justify it by maneuvering your pieces accordingly. So it's a confidence thing. But it's okay to trade it off. Now you made mention in the notes that your rook has to come back this way. Well, that's not necessarily true. You can also later advance your c-pawn, and the rook can come into play on the second rank. Okay, Let's take a look. Let's see what happens. Now, here you mentioned you left the d4 pawn hanging. I agree. But let's suppose for a moment it wasn't hanging. What's wrong with what you're doing? What's wrong with what you're doing is, aside from the fact he can take your pawn, and we're not concerned about that, it's that you lose the square. You no longer have e5 as a stopping ground for your pieces. It's almost an outpost. Do you understand the concept of an outpost?
I think so.
Okay, an outpost is a square that you can occupy with a piece where it can't be driven away by a pawn. Okay, now e5 isn't a pure outpost because it can be driven away with a pawn. But if black eventually does drive it away with a pawn, he creates a new weakness on e6. Another thing I want you to always think when you play, because this is so true. Every time you move a piece, any piece on the board, piece or pawn, anytime you move a pawn or a piece, you're making at least one weakness somewhere on the board. In a pawn's case, your first move, d4, weakens 4 squares. That pawn can no longer protect 4 squares. Now it's not a weakness that you're going to take advantage of. You'd have to make another weakness later for your opponent to be able to exploit that. But every time you move a pawn, you create a weakness. So that's why I know that if black ever kicks your knight out, your knight on e5 has done its job. It's going to retreat and has created a weakness. So unfortunately, after you drop the pawn, there's not much to the game. But we'll kind of do a quick run through. This would have been the correct move, with the idea that you don't have to take back with the pawn. Yes, you have to take care of this guy. That's true. Let's hold rook e1. Okay, now I'm going to develop this rook as quickly as I possibly can. Here's why. Now black has a little threat, knight b4, relying on a pin. Okay, but now you come back queen b1, and you should be fine. Now you're still not ready for knight e5. Well, black gets a move. What's he going to do? Let's pick a move. Because there's a possibility that later you might be taking that pawn with check. Let's move this pawn. That does create a weakness in his king side. But now you play rook e1. He needs to find a move. Let's put this here. And now there it is. And, we got to watch this pawn again. Dang it, I keep forgetting about that pawn. Okay. Well, let's stop and put the rook here. Wait. Well, no, we can do it one more move. We can go. Actually, instead of putting the queen on b1, I think the queen can go to c1. I think that's better. Watch. Instead of going to b1, let's go to c1. The point being, if you bring the knight here, I'm going to tuck the bishop back here. Okay? This saves a tempo. Okay. Now let's move this here. Move this here. And like I say, now you're ready for this. And suppose he decides to take now and get it over with. And then he retreats his knight. You bring a knight in. Now he kicks your rook out. Well, he's just made a weakness. 2 weaknesses, actually. G6 is weaker, and E6 is weaker. So you can bring your rook back. Now you see this rook is ready to double, right? We found a way to do that. You might be able to occupy G6 with your bishop. Then from G6, it might come back to G4 at some point, attacking this. It might provoke him to push this pawn, which creates a new weakness. Now the E5 is a permanent weakness. I mean, all kinds of possibilities exist. But once you drop the pawn, unfortunately, that's the game. And what I noticed looking at your games, you're kind of like me. You make little simple one-move errors. I have a website that you probably haven't seen before that you're going to like, because it helps teach you board awareness. And I'll send it at the end of the lesson. I'll send you a link on Skype and to talk about it. But he didn't take your He didn't take your knight. He took your pawn. And now, unfortunately, you're just a pawn down. And you don't really have compensation. Now there's the deadly discovered check threatened. So you got your king out of there. And I'm going to kind of go through quick just to get more time on the other games. But now you're going to lose another pawn, and pretty much the game's over. And even though you're attacking his queen, it doesn't matter. You've just lost, 3 pawns? And there's just no defense. And there goes, there's just basically no defense. And as it finally turns out, now he's running his pawn. That pawn's just going to move right up the board, and there's nothing you can do about it. Okay, so let me bring up another game. Let me bring up the 2 annotated games first. Okay, here we go. Reset. Okay. I'll flip the board. Okay, you're playing. Right. Okay, so he's not playing a very aggressive opening. As a matter of fact, he's made a mistake because, he's not really made a mistake. It's a variation of what they call the center game. Usually, white does that on the second move, but you get development. You get development for in return for his queen coming out early. Now you fell into one little problem here, and I'm gonna fast forward it, and then we're gonna come back and talk about it. See, the problem you run into is kind of one that a lot of the beginner chess players run into. It's the fact that this bishop is pinning this knight, and that this knight can come in and force a doubling of the pawns. Mm-hmm. So we want to look for ways to avoid that. You don't want that to happen. So let's back this up and see how we can avoid that happening. It's good to develop pieces, but at the same time, here's a good move for you. Go attack his queen again. Because that's what this does is it gives you the 2 bishops. Now, the 2 bishops are very valuable in an open board. And so what you want to do is you want to get the board open, and you can do it just like this, d5. Now you have another tempo. Okay? You're attacking his queen. If he checks you, no big deal. You just block the check with a pawn. But just to illustrate, for the purposes of what I want, see, now he's breaking the Nimzovich rule. He's making a move which develops your piece. See? Now, if he takes, he's violating the rule again. He's improved the position of your knight. Your knight's now on the 4th rank instead of the 3rd rank. And look what you have here. You have you're black, but you have 1 piece developed. Your opponent doesn't. You have the 2 bishops. You have possibilities to gain more tempos. What's white going to do? Well, what I say is how to analyze is develop a piece. Okay, here we go. Now, if you want, you can develop this bishop and attack this pawn. He has to stop and take care of that. He might take care of it like this. We don't know. He might do that. But that's okay. And you now threatening to play maybe c5 and take that pawn. At some point, he has to cover it. So your 2 bishops will really do a lot in an open board. And as long as you don't shut them in with pawns, your bishops are doing great here. So you want to try to strive, when you can get a position like this, you want to kind of try to aim for it. That would have given you a very simple and clear advantage. As it stands, and there's nothing wrong with that move, but it's not necessarily taking the foot off the gas pedal like I talk about, but in a way it is, because you had something a little better that led to a clearer position. But the point is we want now that this is here, we want to recognize that white is threatening to play this in 2 moves, and we want to stop it. Well, one way to stop it is to have the bishop here. But you've already played it to c5, and that's a perfectly good square. So this is something that needs to be dealt with right now. You can still do it with this move. But the difference is when you take on c4, you don't have time to play d5 because your bishop on c5 is loose. But you can still play knight e5. Now you castled. He didn't play knight c3 right away. He played knight f3. And now when you play d6, you're losing the option. You're losing the option to bring this bishop back, even though that costs a tempo. And now, unfortunately, it looks like he's going to get it in. There's only one move that I can see to stop it, and that's to play here. The point being, if he trades the bishop, you take back with the pawn, and your pawn stops him from playing knight d5. He could still play knight d5, but now, if you want to avoid double pawns, you have to give up the bishop pair. See, before you were winning the bishop pair, now you're giving it up. And he can even afford to take with the bishop here, maybe, and you can't take. Or he could take with the pawn and gain a tempo on your knight. But what I'm saying is you've given up the bishop pair, and this is a kind of an open position, and the white bishops are looking pretty good here. Okay, so let's back it up. And you didn't play bishop e6, you played bishop g4. And now it comes knight d5. Now you brought a third attacker in line. Now I want to show something to you just to see what you know. Can you tell me what's wrong with playing h6? Let's see if you understand this. What's wrong with trying to chase that bishop out? Well, actually, he'll take it with the knight. This is an example of an overworked piece. This pawn on g7 is defending two squares. You can only defend one. And after you take with the pawn, normally he has this move. I guess in this case he can take this way. That might be more powerful. But I wanted to illustrate this position can come up in a lot of different situations. But here you played the correct move that I've been wanting you to play, knight e5. He took here, but this is a mistake. If he plays queen f5, he actually has the better game. Now, this is not a move that's easy to see. A lot of players they'll stop their analysis right now. They'll say, I can't play queen f5. He takes my bishop. And we're all guilty of this. This is one of the funny things about chess, and I'll try to help you here. Have you ever heard of international master Jeremy Silman? He wrote a book, How to Reassess Your Chess. It's about its 4th or 5th volume or edition. Completely rewritten. Have you heard of him?
I heard the name, but I never read the book.
Okay. Well, he's got a lot of fans. His work is highly regarded. And what he says in his book, see, these are one of these things where we say, I can't do that, and we stop looking. He says, if you could, every time you stop analyzing a position saying, I can't do that, every time you do that, if you're actually to train yourself to check everything out and see if you can do that, you'll often find out you can, and your rating will go up about 150, 200 points. See, this involves a piece sacrifice. So what you do is you say, white says, I can't play here because he takes my bishop. And then they slam the door shut. They don't look any further. But watch what happens if you take the bishop. Okay, white to play. Knight takes knight, check. Black has 3 legal moves. If he puts the king on h8, it's checkmate. If you take with the queen, you've lost your queen. That leaves taking with the pawn. Now comes this check. Or no, it's not a check. I'm sorry. Now you're attacking the queen. If the queen moves, you get checkmated. See what I mean? So, so your opponent missed a clear advantage, and that's probably why he missed it, because you can't take the bishop. And now what's going to happen? He's going to force a doubling of your pawns here. There's nothing you can do about it. I think you have to come back here, and now you are in a very annoying pin that's not going to go away. You know, this knight is pinned, so he would have had a clear advantage with queen f5. But what he played was a blunder, and this enabled you to win a piece, and now you get the bishop free. And you know, you had talked about this. You said maybe you better try to get rid of that blockade that the bishop has on the pawn. Yeah. One thing I tell students, don't worry about one move threats. He'll see that the pawn is attacked, and you're not going to necessarily go anywhere with that. You're putting your knight on the side of the board. Just get him back in place. So let's see, you have 6 pawns, he has 7. You don't need to win a pawn now. You can win all the pawns you want once you have all your pieces where you want them to be. Okay? So there's no hurry. There's no hurry to win pawns. Even though he gave you one, and maybe this should work out. Your knight's getting back into play. Now let's see. I can't fault any of your moves yet until you know where it's going. He has minor threats, but you handle them well. Your game is fine. Now you go a counterattack a pawn. That's good. And he's not really making any progress. And unfortunately, you had to give something back here, but you missed the shot. I guess this move took you by surprise, correct?
Yeah.
But here you have to move. You blundered with king here. You have to take this, and the position is in your favor. See, you now get to win this pawn, and that makes a big difference. He only has 2 pawns against your 1, but you have 4 pawns against 1. You're still 2 pawns up. You should still win this, because after what you did, the game kind of took on a very even base, and he even missed a forced win. I'll show you when we get there. He blundered here. I think he gave it in a note, G4. G4, he's in serious trouble. This rook's in serious trouble. If you try to get the rook out, the king comes up and you get mated on the side. So here he blundered, but the game, like I say, it's about even. The only difference is, even though you're both 2 pawns ahead, 2 against 0 run faster than 4 do against 2. And that's what happened to you. With proper play, you can hold it. But now you see he got rid of the target. And then the other thing you did wrong was you questioned. See, your pawns aren't strong on dark squares. That's the color of your bishop. You have no defense to the light squares. He can blockade you, and his pawns are off and running. And you caught that right, and then basically there was no hope here. His pawns are just marching, and your pawns have been stopped. And now you can't even push c4. And his pawns are more active, and the game is quickly over. Okay, so I want to save time and get all the games. Let's see.
What was the time control of this game?
Well, I had it on your history. I think it was the one we just played. It was it was 45-45. The one we just played. The other one was, I think, it might have 40. 30-30 or 40-30.
Okay.
This next one is played that I'll look at chess.com. I think this next one is a 30-minute game. And let's look at one you won. Sometimes with my students, I look at games they lose. I keep working on their losses at first, trying to fix what's wrong with their games. We're all going to lose games, and these internet games are just target practice. But after a while, I switch over and I start looking at their wins, and because we want to see if if they're winning the games as efficiently as they should. And sometimes what happens, they actually get a losing game, but they win it. And I say, well, that happens. How many times have you lost a game you should have won? Well, it's only fair that you win some. Okay, so you're black, Scandinavian. Usually the queen goes to a5 in these types of positions. The drawback with putting it here is it might get tempoed with knight b5 and you're shutting your bishop. But now you have to get developed, and you're doing that. Now, here, that might be too quick. I can't argue with success. The move you played won the game, but it probably shouldn't have won the game. What do you think is a better move aside from bishop e6, which you played, to try to take advantage of the fact that this move is premature? I can go ahead and show it to you. Knight d8. See, what knight d8 does is it exposes the fact that he's launching a premature attack. Okay? You're going to be able, let's make a developing move for him, d3. Okay? Now you can simply kick that knight back safely. Now, even though it weakens your pawn structure, he's lost time with that knight, and your development is catching up. And now you can return the knight to c6, and you've got this pawn on e5 covered. Let's develop a bishop, and your game is fine.
I'm sorry, Bill. Why couldn't I do it before I took my knight back?
Do what?
Why couldn't I kick him
With
with
a
h6
you
before maneuvering the knight back? Right.
you can't, because nothing is guarding f7.
Okay.
So knight d8, and there's no guarantee he would play like I showed you. If he plays some bad moves, and we don't know what he's going to do, good players are going to play good moves, but if on knight d8, let's just play a bad move for him, okay? Because you never know what these people do. You'd be surprised with all the games I see. Let's play a bad move for him. I'm trying to play it. My mouse is not cooperating. Come on, mouse. It won't drag. There it goes. Okay, now you play it, and he comes back. Now you have a new. Before I had your knight going back to e6. Now your knight maybe has a new potential square to go to at some point. You might put it on e6. Now I don't know. That might be tactically unsound. The reason is e5 could be loose, but you can't push e5 here. But at some point you may have a knight e6 maneuver, and or you could even choose to play knight e6 here. And now if there's trades made, you don't get a pawn weakness. But you've traded two minor pieces, and that's something I've suggested not to do. I said, don't trade off too many minor pieces. But knight d8 is a better move because his knight g5 is just premature. But now as a result, you give up the bishop pair and you have a weak pawn. But this pawn is doing you some good. It's controlling a couple key squares. You do have a half-open f-file. Okay, d3. Now you elect to castle queenside. Okay, that's fine. He pins you. Okay, that's an outpost for now. And if he ever kicks it out, we've seen that it weakens a new square. Okay, now I would rather. Well, yeah, this makes sense. You have to launch a pawn storm against his king. You want to be running your pawns against his king. So this is good. Normally, I wouldn't play that. I would break the pin, but because you're trying to attack on the king side, uh, this is okay because you're going to have to do it at some point. Although I still may prefer to play my bishop here. But this is coming. You have to recognize this is coming, and he didn't play knight here. This gains him a tempo. See, you can't take the knight because of the pin. Okay, so now you have to stop and move your queen. Where are you going to put your queen? If you pretty much have to put it here if you're going to guard f6. Okay, and let's see. I'm just wondering if he can take advantage because he's gained a tempo. Maybe not. Let's see. What if he takes this? Okay, it's just a what if. I'm eyeballing this square as potentially weak. I can't play queen g4 because of this. It's okay. He gains a tempo, but it didn't gain him much. But you want to be on the lookout for these kind of moves. That's why if you play bishop e7, not only do you develop a piece, but you break the pin. Now you can, if you need to take with the knight, you can. Okay? And I prefer piece moves to pawn moves in the opening, but it's a move you have to play eventually. He retreated his bishop, and now knight f5. Okay, that's good. That attacks his bishop. He can still play his knight to e4. He went that way instead. Okay. This could lead to some problems for him. I want to put the queen on b6. The reason I want to put it on b6 is I guard this pawn, and I'm active on this diagonal. And that's what happens. Now he takes your knight. And now you've got a nice half-open file. And he has yet to start his pawn storm. He's supposed to be attacking your king by advancing his pawns. Okay. Now that weakened your pawn structure ever so slightly. The reason I wouldn't play the pawn there is this helps put his knight back in play. Here's something to ask yourself. Where's that knight going next? Well, it's not going to a7. It's not going to c7. It's not going to c6. And it's not going to d4. Therefore, let's let him move it on his own. Why spend a tempo and help him? Do you understand what I'm saying? I would not make that move. And now he comes up with an interesting sacrifice. You can almost accept that. I think you can take this. In some cases you can't, but all he's threatening, well, it looks risky, but I don't think he has enough of an attack. Let's do what I always say: develop a piece. Okay, that protects f6. You're getting ready for knight d4. What's he going to do? Check you? I don't think the check gets him anywhere. I don't think he has an attack here. He has to cut d5 off for the check to be effective. I think you're just a clear piece ahead. There's some positions where you can't take. I'll show you one right after this game. Okay. You stopped him. That's okay. But one drawback with... another reason you don't want to push your pawns in front of your king. Okay, as I said, he's supposed to run a pawn advance. And so are you. You run your pawns, you try to break open the opponent's king position. Anytime you advance a pawn, you bring the future break move all the closer. Eventually he can move his b pawn, and he'll be that much closer to getting it to b5. And if it gets to b5, probably what's going to happen is either he takes and you take back. In either case, there's an open b file. Or if you take, he'll take back with a piece and he has an open b file. If you keep your pawn on a7, he's got a long way to go with those pawns before he can create the tension. Tension meaning potential pawn captures of pawns. Okay, so let's a6. Okay, now he's getting ready for b4, and he's going to try to start opening up some lines. So here you're weakening your pawn structure again. This is the side of the board that you need to be playing on. Okay. And that unprotected a pawn, so you get checked. And there went a piece. You won this game. You're down a piece, but you won this game. So whatever you did worked. Okay, now you've opened up lines towards your king. What does he do wrong here? Ah, I see it. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Okay, well, that's good. You can do this against the lower rated players, but you can't do it as much against the higher rated players because you can't. Good job. Now, here you missed a good move. What does he do if you play here? So your threat is mate in 1. And is only if he moves his pawn, either pawn, you take the rook with check, and I'm sure the rest is easy. So the only other choice is to defend with his queen. And then you do that. And he can give it up now. But your move worked. Okay. Bishop c5. Now rook d1. That did it. Yeah. Oh, good job. Okay. I mentioned about a trap where you can... here, let me show you this trick. Comes out of something they call the Ruy-Lopez exchange variation. Why didn't it take the knight? There it did. Let's see, is it this move? No. Castles. Here's a sacrifice that white can't accept, because he just gets himself checkmated here real quick. And I'm not going to show you much more of it. But notice one difference between this and your game. This gave you a critical tempo on that knight. There was no tempo with his pawn. Okay, we have one more game and about 8 minutes to cover it. And I don't know where this one was played. It doesn't. He said one wasn't played on chess.com. So I don't know the time control of this one. Okay. All right. Ah. Okay. So you're white. Okay. You shut your bishop in, but that's part of the collie if that's what you're playing for. It's okay. Okay. Now this is premature. He's developing. He's moving a piece twice before he's developed completely. And that's premature. So just bring your... Either way you put your bishop, you should be fine. You're going to drive him out and take control of e4. But you didn't... Okay, that's okay too, but you're giving up your good bishop. You would have a strategy of driving him out. And if he ever plays f5, he's giving you a great square on e5. But that's okay. We'll see where this goes. Now you can fork his 2 pawns. What does he do if you put this knight here?
Eventually, it comes to that. Not exactly this position, but eventually I take advantage of it.
Okay, well, we'll see. Now you are attacking one. He guards it. Now okay, you're attacking them both. That does it. He might play queen d5 here. No. What if he plays queen d5? That seems to defend him. He missed it. Okay, b5. Now you take it. You got his pawn. Okay, so you're clear pawn up. Unfortunately, let's see. Did you win this game? It says black won, but the last move is a white move. Okay.
I think I won.
Okay. Well, it says 0-1, but we'll see what happens.
Okay.
Okay, maybe you just typed it wrong. Okay, you're doing fine here. Okay. I have no problem with you trying to break the position open, but finish your development first, especially since you can't really get at his king, but you want to get your development first so that you can get your rooks into the game. But it's a good idea to try to open up some lines.
I thought this was a developing move because I wanted my bishop at
Yeah,
b2.
right. It's perfectly good. I just thought I don't mind breaking moves. I'm glad that you did it. It's just that my first thought, it doesn't mean it's always right. My first thought is always on development. Okay, so he grabs you, and now he's got a great square, but he can't really stay there. Let's see, what was that last move? Okay, uh, now you've locked up the position, but you have an a4 break. There it is. Okay.
I was very happy with this because I thought I was blocking his bishop
Yeah, yeah,
there, and I thought I might be able to take it somehow.
right. Now the one thing you should win this position. You are tied down to guarding this pawn on e5, but I'm not too worried about that. Uh, Things you have to worry about. Make sure that he doesn't trade this bishop for this knight. Then you have the bishop of opposite colors, and those are often drawn. Although with rooks on the board, there's plenty of play. Let's see what happens. Okay, attack his pawn. That's going to win it. The only drawback is now he's going to get the file, and he didn't take it. He could have gone to a8. Now, here's one of these things about the Nimzovich rule where I talk about don't make moves that help your opponent's position. Let's look at this. You have an active rook here, and he has a passive rook here, right? This rook is active, this rook is passive. By making this exchange, you just developed his passive rook. A better move would be, see what I'm saying? You just developed his bad rook. Now he's ready to get this rook into play on this open file. It looks like you can match that. You can play bishop b2. I would put it on b2. The reason being, oh no, you have to watch e4. Dang it. Okay, but let's do it my way. Let's go here. Now, if he comes here, you can't afford to just let him take. So you develop this piece finally. Now, if he takes, suddenly you have an outside pass pawn. That's a good pawn to have. You just got to make sure you don't lose it. He attacks it. You put your rook behind it. That's a good place to have a rook behind your pawn. But maybe he's got some play here. Maybe so. Let's see. This is why it would have been better to develop your pieces, and you wouldn't have to stop and make moves like bishop d2 trying to get your pieces activated. I think he's going to come in and win that pawn now. That's why I wanted your pieces out before you make your breaks, because you had to stop and get that bishop out of the way. See, if you would love to play, wait, see here, you'd love to play this, and if he plays here, you'd love to be able to back it up with your rook. And you can't because this bishop's in the way. That's why I like development first. Okay, let's look at what happened. You traded. Now his rook's active. You didn't play to b2, you played to d2. But now he gets the open file for what it's worth. And that's a mistake on his part. He's shutting his own bishop in. He's allowing you to get a new diagonal. You can get an outside pass pawn or another pass pawn, access to this diagonal. And I see these things instantly because I look at what the pieces they can take. Now here, he should probably take with his bishop and let you take with your knight. But he took with his pawn. Now I'm looking at this square. I'm still looking at this diagonal if I can use it. I'm looking at ideas of putting the bishop here, here, and here, and tie him down to defending this pawn. Just had to make sure he doesn't get your pawn. You have all kinds of good ideas here. So you played one of my ideas. And he helped you. See? He helped. He drove you to where you wanted to go. So he's made a mistake. He could have had a rook down here. A stronger player will find better moves. Okay? Now, for what it's worth, you've got him tied down. But you're tied down to guarding this pawn and this pawn. And this pawn isn't under attack yet. Okay, so you bring your knight here. Now, what if he plays rook a3? Rook a3 attacks your pawn. How do you guard it? I guess with rook c1. Then he plays rook d2. I think you're going to lose a pawn back. Anyway, he played rook a2. And you put the knight back. Now, here's one thing I talk to students when they move a piece twice. Let's look at, it's black's move here. Let's look at the position here. I'm going to click it after black's 30th move. Notice that white's position will not change. See that? Now I'm clicking it after your 31st move. So what you're saying, this is what I try to teach the concept like this. Okay, what you're saying to black is, I'll tell you what, it's my move, but I don't want to move. I'm going to make a deal with you can't refuse. I'm going to give you 2 moves as long as one of them is rook a2. You get to make any 2 moves as long as the first one is rook a2. And see here it's white's move, and here it's black's move, and now here comes his second move. So let's compare now with what happened. Look at your position here, and look at your position there. It was your move here, and it's your move there. So that's one thing when you move a piece, make sure you don't have to go put it back where it started, or you run into losing these 2 tempos. Now he can take your pawn, but you get a pin. Now he's after another pawn, but he missed your trick. And now you're going to win a piece. And now you're up a clear piece. Okay, so now the rest is simple. You have his pawn blockaded. He can't go anywhere. He can't advance his pawn. You just enter with your king. And, oh, he gave you a piece. Now the game's over. Okay, you did win. Okay, so that's 4 games. Now, one thing to think about here. Let me do this first. So I can explain it while I talk. I'll get the link from. I gave it to somebody else on Skype. It'll just take me a second to open up their Skype page and copy the link. I have a chess website. It's called that I know about. It's called Chess Minefield. It's not a realistic chess site in that you solve chess problems. It's a puzzle site. They give you a small board. It might only be 5 squares by 6 squares, and it's loaded with nothing but black pieces. And there'll even be illegal positions, like there'll be an extra, a whole bunch of kings. But your objective is, here I'm sitting on Skype, your objective is to place white pieces on the board where they cannot be captured. And as long as you understand the rules of chess, which you do, that's a perfect site for you, because what it will do is you have a timer, and sometimes you have to place 1 piece, sometimes 2, sometimes 3. It varies. And every time you misfire, you lose a life. You get 6 chess pieces, 6 lives. And every time you solve so many boards, you get a bonus life. I've made it up to a level 40 and I got bored with it. But it's something that even though I get bored with it, I'll go back and play with it for a little while. I don't try to get to huge levels. I go play with it because it teaches you to be aware of the board. Oh, it's okay. I know you're curious about it. It teaches you to be aware of the board at a quick notice. And you need that. You need some board awareness when you calculate, because when you analyze a position, you have to be able to look forward, and you want to make sure that you're keeping your pieces safe, not only in the moves you play, but in the moves you could play, in the variation you could play. So I think it's great practice. I think you'll like it. And but the objective is, see, one thing about, I didn't explain it exactly like I wanted in video lesson 1. That was made over 2 years ago. What I talk about is fixing your weaknesses, and that makes your rating go up. See, the thing I left out was everybody reaches a certain level of strength, and they don't improve unless they take steps to improve. And one way the people that are enthusiastic about chess and study, they'll keep improving, but eventually they too reach a level where it's hard to improve. But what I'm talking about is eliminating your weaknesses. See, what happens when if you lose games because of this reason or that reason, whatever it might be, if you're losing a game because, in your case, you miss one move combinations, you forget to, or you unprotect a piece and leave it open for capture, or you play bad openings that you don't understand how to play certain positions when you're given a chance to get an advantage, you don't take the advantage. Whatever weaknesses you identify, if you can correct them, then what happens, as I explained in the video lesson 1, is you stop losing games you should have won or drawn. You stop drawing games you should have won. Okay? And what that basically means is your rating goes up. Well, that's a no-brainer. If you're winning more games, your rating goes up. But the whole key is, when your rating goes up, that leads you to playing stronger players. And when you play stronger players, you learn more. You tend to learn more because the stronger players will play a better game of chess. When you make a mistake, they will not let you back in the game. And that's good because you see how they do it. One thing about the video lessons group, even though we're the third largest group on the site, we're not a very strong team. I can overwhelm any team if I put out a recruiting effort, and I do that every now and then just so we beat some of the better teams. But for the most part, I don't recruit heavily for the matches. And the reason I do this is, like when we play a team like Romeo and Juliet, they're an incredibly strong team. They recruit players in order to win matches. And that's fine. But they have a strong team. So when we play against them, every one of our boards is outranked 50 to 150 points. And I love that for our guys, because then you get a chance to play a stronger player. Therefore, by playing a stronger player, you get a chance to learn more. So that's we have a great group for the correspondence chess, and we get killed like 80 to 50 or something like that, depending on how many boards. But I think it's a great experience for our player. It doesn't mean anything. It wouldn't mean anything for me to recruit heavily and every match and win every match by a huge margin. What do we get for it? Oh, we have our group listed on the leaderboard. After you participate in maybe 1,000 matches, eventually you catch up with the teams that have been doing this a few years ahead of us, and suddenly our group is, well, that doesn't do our players any good. It doesn't. But playing stronger players does. So, today, this first lesson, we've discovered a couple of your weaknesses. You leave pieces on the take. You forget that a square is, you're vacating protection of a square. And then the other things are just strategical things. Now, I'm happy to work with you, as you say. I can't. It takes time. It takes time to build you up. What I want to do is try to have you now play a fresh set of games, and then we can go and see what you've applied. And of course, there's going to be new things that we haven't had a chance to go over that are going to come up. But uh, that's basically how I work with the student. I get him. I have them go back and play fresh games. We don't worry about what you did before. Now we're worrying what we're going to focus on what you've taken from this lesson. And if you'd like to come, if you'd like to return with me, I'm more than happy to help. Uh, that would be what I'd like you to do. Play some more games at the long time controls, and then we can start building you up to uh, where you can improve your play.
Okay, that sounds good. I have another 45 game on Sunday.
Ah,
So hopefully I can implement one of the things that we discussed today.
right. Just watch your time management on that. Don't play it too quickly. Uh,
No, I never play too quickly. The
okay, good.
problem is that I play too slow.
Well, that's all right. If you're too slow, that's good. Uh, that's fine if you're too slow. They don't have time stamping at chess.com. We can't see how long you took on your moves. But I've been making videos over at the ICC site for over 2 years in their 45-45 league, and I can't begin to tell you how many people have finished their game with more time on their clock than they started, and they just don't understand that chess is a game you take your time. You have almost 2 minutes a move on the average until you hit move 40. Here, I'll explain it real quick. The the average game lasts about 40 moves. Usually by move 40, if the game's not over, chances are the the person that's going to win can be determined. Not always. Sometimes they have to play out a tough ending and it's still equal. But you want to gauge it on move 40. That's why over the board tournaments, most of the time controls are 40 moves in so many hours or so many minutes, and then they put in a secondary time control. I don't know why they can't put a secondary time control on the internet, but nobody's done it yet. They need to. But anyway, you want to have on your clock about 5 minutes left when you have the increment. You want about 5 minutes left at move 40. That way you've got some extra time in case you got to stop and work something out. Plus you still get that 45-second increment every move that'll keep you on your pace. So that gives you almost 2 minutes a move. Not quite, but almost. And you need that time.
Time again when he thinks.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if your opponent moves quick, he may make good moves, and he may make good moves in one particular game against you. But in the long run, he's going to make more bad moves than good moves, and you'll lose to somebody that moves quick, but not every time. Okay. Any questions you have?
No, sounds great.
Okay. What I'm going to do is as soon as I sign off, is I'm going to upload this video and send it to your inbox, and then you can download it and review at your leisure. Okay. All right. Thanks, Yair. It was a pleasure meeting you, and we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, thanks.
Take care.
Okay, bye.
You too. Bye now.